This is Hash and Mash Mining. Basically, I'm an enthusiast who started building a few rigs this month, and I want to share my experiences with all of you. So I started earlier this month, like I said previously. I want to say January 2nd or 3rd of this year, being 2018, with my first test rig. Really basic, essentially a gaming PC with an Intel Celeron processor instead of, say, an i5 or an i7, and standard Windows rig, 2 sticks of DDR4, each 4 gigs, SSD, 128 gigs, MSI motherboard, which had 2 full PCIe 1x16 slots. I don't know how many lanes were open, but for mining it doesn't really matter. A couple fans on the case, a 850 watt power supply, which is actually overkill. I could have gotten away with something more in the 500 to 600 watt range, but you know, I'm new to this, I'm learning too. And overall, it went well for the first 2 weeks, so I decided to add on an additional 2 rigs later on. One basically the same build, same internals. The other one, same internals except for the graphics cards, which have, instead of 2 GTX 1060s with 6 gigs of RAM, I had 2 570s with 4 gigs of RAM. And all 3 have been running absolutely fine. Since then, temperatures have been ranging roughly. The RX 570s have been ranging in the basically 55 to 65 degree range, and my GTX 1060s in the 70 to 80 range, no overclocking. These rigs are meant to be more stable, more safe. I see other mining operations, and while they're really cool and really interesting and really unique, there's definitely, they just scream fire hazard to me. And for an enthusiast, you don't necessarily want a fire hazard in your house. If you have the resources to kind of put it more off site, if you have warehouse space, things like that, if you don't pay for electricity, then yeah, you can be a little more reckless. But me, I don't have those opportunities. Unfortunately, I wish I did. I'm super jealous of those other people and what they can do. But for me, I can't do that. So that's why I'm reaching out to people like me that want to get involved but don't necessarily have the resources to do so. So yeah, that's when I started. So right now I have 3 rigs, and I'm looking to build a 4th one in a few days. I ordered all the parts, and basically instead of 2 GPUs, I'm going to put in 3 1060, 6 gigs. So pretty standard card for mining. Now I've talked about what's in them. Standard stuff, nothing really, all Windows bigs. I might look into Linux builds later or other mining operating systems because they require a little less on the RAM side and the hard drive side. Some can actually run off a flash drive, so that's way cheaper than an SSD. So my ROI has been pretty good. I'm looking at about 8 to 9 months, which is relatively good for a conservative rig. Obviously, if I had a 6 GPU mining rig with an open frame case and risers and overclocked, which to me, all those things just add on to the fire hazard mentality, which I live in a house, don't want to burn it down, don't have those external resources like warehouse space, or you know, I just don't want to have to worry about it during the day. So that's kind of why I go for these lower end, and I also don't have the initial investment money to start up with those crazy GPU setups. So this is definitely a great way to kind of slowly start building, and ideally I like to use my rigs to pay off additional rigs over time. And the way I see it, I can probably add on an additional one after probably a month and a half of mining. So yeah, an ROI for a standard rig with open frame case, overclocking, 6 GPUs, probably be about 6 months. Mine are go roughly from 8 to 9 based off my calculations. Obviously that fluctuates with the market, but if you have the space, if you have free electricity, I guess, or if it's included, say, in your rent, something like that, then it's definitely worthwhile. So you should do it if you are interested. Right now it's a little hard to find graphics cards. I'm sure you've looked, I'm sure you've read articles. I feel horrible for gamers. It's just one of those things where it's just a weird time for actually both the companies and the gamers. So right now they're trying to respond to the shortages in different ways. Each company has their own mentality. Some aren't going to change anything. Some are trying to just produce more cards as fast as they can. So it's kind of a weird gray area right now for both miners and actual gamers. But if you feel comfortable with having a computer run basically in a corner of a room or just on top of your desk, This is more for people that just want to have one or two smaller ones that want to invest, say, maybe 1,500 to 2 grand, maybe 2,500 instead of say 5 grand, and they don't necessarily want a fire hazard. And I'm not saying that those rigs out there are fire hazards, but the reality is you have exposed electronics. Me personally, I have pets, so that's something that can, I feel like, get in the way of those components. I feel like mine have just better airflow, so hopefully that'll add to the longevity of the card. Plus, I'm not overclocking, so I can hopefully squeeze some more life out of these cards. Graphics cards are pretty infrequent when they run. Essentially, some of them can die after a month, some of them can die after 10 years. It's just, I don't want to say it's luck of the draw, but definitely when you add in those additional factors of extra heat and overclocking, it doesn't help out with life expectancy. So that's just something else to keep in mind. But overall, it's been a great experience. I've learned a lot about the market. I've been invested in cryptocurrency for the better part of a year now, probably since last April, being 2017, and I used a lot of my profits to basically buy these rigs. So it's just a fun way of, I guess, cashing out, because you're still in the market. It's a great way, in theory, long term, just to have a continuous stream of revenue, spending money basically after you break your ROI, which some people have gotten lucky and they've broken their ROI in 2 to 3 months. It's, market goes up, then in theory everything that you've made prior also goes up. So it's something else to keep in mind, but it could also go down. So it's a double-edged sword, essentially. Just food for thought. Overall experience has been great. If you're someone that doesn't want to invest that much, I recommend it. It's been great. Heat, noise, electricity haven't been an issue so far. Everything's been running fine. No downtime, really. Maintenance, for the most part, has been minimal. I had one fan break on me, which fans are cheap. They're easy to replace. So that was basically a 10-minute fix. No worries. And if you have some minor PC building experience, and you could very, very easily build a rig like this. If you have no experience, it's still easy to build a PC, and it's actually really fun. This could be a really cool way to start building computers if you haven't already, if you're really at the novice enthusiast level. But I'm looking for more people that have some experience and were kind of on the fence because they get intimidated by those bigger farms or bigger rigs. But I'm here to say that if you're willing to forgo some of those profits, with a little bit of a longer ROI, it's a little more than a little bit, but I would say it's definitely there. It's fun, it's worth it. And if you've made a lot of money in investing in crypto from way back when, then it feels kind of good just to cash out and see what, it's actually basically, it's real. You basically bought something. It's kind of cool. So yeah, my 2 cents. Hope I help people out there that are on the fence about building rigs, and good luck finding those graphics cards.